Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. So today, it's time for the sequel to How Stupid Is Your Stash? Now, 2 years ago, it's almost exactly 2 years, I made this video, How Stupid Is Your Stash, which got a lot of views, after over 20,000 views. I was quite surprised. Very popular indeed. And one of the reasons for its popularity was I don't just talk about my ridiculous stash, I talk about your ridiculous stashes. And there were some very, very interesting responses to some of those difficult questions that I was asking of you. Not just about my foolishness and overspending and buying every latest stupid item that you don't really need, etc, etc, or the very latest models that come out that we all feel compelled to rush out and buy. No. Some of the responses were absolutely amazing. So I'll start with that. I'll start with the responses to that because I think it's worthy of talking about, and I think there are some lessons to be learned and some quite remarkable facts that came out of some of the feedback I got. And then we need to talk about whether you and I have learned anything at all from our little talk and our watching and considering our stashes. So we'll start with that. First of all, I'll tell you that there was a comment I made underneath the How Stupid Is Your Stash. I think I pinned it as the comment that was pinned by me, and I basically said a gentleman came forward. There was two gentlemen actually, both I think in the United States. One gentleman came forward and said that he had 1,800 kits in his stash. Now I've had 200 in mine, which is what I was talking about in the video, and I said that I felt that over 100 was pretty ridiculous, really. Certainly after, in my case, I have the excuse of 120 of them are really Matchbox. And there's two here, Matchbox Classics. You see, maybe it's slightly because I know it'll go off screen if I'm not careful. So we've got the Wellington here, and we've got the Jaguar. We've got the Bugatti Type 59 car as well. I'll just show very, there we go. I knew that was going to happen. The Bugatti 59, but they're just a random sample that I just happened to sort of reach for today. Now, I knew that one just determined to fall off. But because I've got quite a large number, it's really a collection rather than a stash. Remember, a stash, as I said last time, a stash by its very definition is a hoard, a secret hoard of your most treasured items. In my case, it's mainly Matchbox and Wingnut Wings and Tabia. Those are my three probable favourites. Then there's ICM and Airfix, and we've got many others. Border, we've got Fujimi, we've got Academy, we've got all sorts here. Even Brengum and the new Qatari as well. But you, as I said last time, you may be more keen on your Great Wall Hobbies or Edward, etc, etc. We all have our favourites. Anyway, the point is, this gentleman I mentioned, he said I've got 1,800, so he's got 9 times as many kits as what I had. And I put in the comments, and this is quite, I can't hardly believe I'm saying these words, but I put in the comments that, joking, I was only having a bit of fun, and I said, to the gentleman who said, I've got a stash with 1,800 kits in it, I say to you, get help. An alarmed face, you know. Well, the funniest part of this whole tale from them doing that video was that about maybe 7 or 8 weeks later, somebody also in the States he watched the video obviously, and then he read my comments and he was laughing, and he said, buddy, I've got 6,800 kits in my stash, and I actually bought the property next door, the house next door, when people moved out, and sold the house, and I bought it so I could actually keep my kits in it. Now this one takes the cake, okay? And suddenly the guy with 1,800 seems reasonable. You couldn't make it up. I mean, it's just, I was like, what, is he serious? I think he was serious. He said, yeah, it became ridiculous. I had to buy the next door property for his 6,800 kits. Now he didn't say what they were worth, but I can imagine, even if every kit was sort of, I don't know, $50 average, do the maths. It's and this is on top of buying the house just to accommodate them. I've never encountered that before, so I'm telling you like it is. I couldn't find I tried to find the comment just before I came on air, but I couldn't find it. It's in there somewhere. But my God. So I haven't got a problem. Clearly there's no issue here. It makes us, many of us will now feel a lot better. We don't really have a problem. Or do we? We need to now assess carefully between us all what the learnings were from my video, what thoughts it provoked, and whether it made us have an epiphany and see the light, stop buying things we don't need, or, in the case, I'm thinking of one of my regular subscribers and friends, he said, I haven't got anything like I've only got a dozen or something, or words to that effect. It wasn't many. And I said, you need more. So maybe some of you do need more. But let's just have a little rethink. So in 2 years, how has the situation progressed? Have we made this jump to only buying things that we really need? Now, the example I gave 2 years ago, of course, the famous example, which is very typical, a kit many of you will have had, especially the Brits and probably the Germans, is the Revell Tornado in 40x scale. It's a decent kit. It's got some issues, but nothing major. It's just a bit challenging, a bit annoying. Some bad fit around the intakes and things, but it's not terrible. And it's a big seller, But this is a classic example of I was talking about value and, the things that we have in the stash and why we like certain products. And I was talking about the paradox between something like Tamiya and Revell, for example. And this could equally apply to, Qatari versus Airfix or whatever. And I was talking about the fact that if you buy a kit from Tamiya, you can pay £100 on many of their kits, especially their sort of, even the 48 scale F35, I mean. It's about £100 or thereabouts. A lot of money for a 48 scale kit, that is. But you do get a lot of value with it. And some people, I've seen my assessment of the major manufacturers, which I did last year, 2023, including Airfix, Revell, we did Edouard, we did the Japanese manufacturers, the Chinese manufacturers, I should say, because I lumped them together in one video. So you got Great Wall Hobby. Then we did ICM, and we did Zokimura, and we did Tamiya. And there were some interesting comments come out of that, which are very pertinent to what we're talking about now, in terms of the stashes and the overall motivations of why we buy certain things and why we sometimes buy too many things. And the comparison was simply the £100 F35 versus the Tornado from Revell, which was about £26 I paid for it. But then, if you remember, I had it out here on the desk, and in this box was many items of aftermarket that I bought, including weapon sets, seatbelt sets. There was obviously there was a mask set. I had just about everything that you could get for this kit, and I actually pulled them out one by one. I said, that's not standard, that's not standard, that's not... And all this aftermarket stuff came out. And then I said, well, actually it's £130. So it was £104 worth of aftermarket on a £26 kit. So it went from being £26 to £130. And I was saying, which is this good value? Is this sensible? Well, not really. It wasn't, was it? And I've talked about it again recently in the context of my 32nd scale Mosquito build that I'm very slowly doing, but we hope to pick up the pace on that. We're talking about this aftermarket and getting roped into the culture, if you like, or the thought process that makes you think you have to buy all these extras. So, obviously, bearing that in mind, what I explained to everybody, that it's not a very good value proposition really, and that something like Tamiya at £100 suddenly looked great value for money, £30 less than that Tornado cost, obviously, and it's a bigger scale. So suddenly the Tamiya kit looked very good value for money, because pretty much everything you needed was in there. However, there's a lesson to be learned there, isn't there? Have we learned the lesson? Have we? Have I? Oh, have I though? Here's a couple of examples that show that probably, like many of you, I haven't really learned the lesson at all. Here we've got, if you look over my shoulder, sorry, hang on a minute, zoom back a second. If you just look over to the right of my shoulder here, here we've got Ryefield Models Puma, that came out recently, which is the with engine parts Puma, which actually got most parts. It's a very detailed kit actually. And I went out and bought some aftermarket wheels. Now, this is a classic example of a modeller getting ahead of themselves. And I'm as guilty as anybody. Here's a perfect example of me making a mess of it, really. So this, don't get me wrong, this is a good product. But we've got these Upgrade Solution weighted wheels in 3D resin, which I've shown in my review. So I won't give them out again. But they weren't absolutely necessary. And when I did the review of the actual kit, to my surprise and delight, you could say, well, I was a bit surprised at first. It came with rubber wheels, and that's obviously why they decided to give these resin ones. But the rubber wheels in that kit are probably some of the best rubber wheels you'll see on any kit. It's got fantastic detail, no seam line, and they had incredible engraving on the actual side wall of the tyres. It was absolutely fantastic. But I paid, I can't remember the figure now, like £22, I think these were retail, for something that actually didn't really need that. And I even recognised and said, well, I'm not sure you're actually needing them. So I don't think I've even learned my own lesson, never mind about you guys. Now let me just put that on the side for a second. It doesn't stop there. Last year, of course, I did the Kits of the Year competition review at the end of the year, New Year's Eve. And the winner last year was the Zukimura FW190, which just pipped the brilliant Tamiya F35B. And of course the F35B might have actually won the competition had it been, it was obviously the B variant, and we'd already had the A win the competition the year before with me. So it kind of couldn't really win it the second year when it was mostly the same kit. You can argue it wasn't all new. So the Zukimura won it. A kit with fantastic detail, brilliant instructions, absolutely breathtaking. So you would assume naturally that it didn't need anything extra. And it came with nice wheels, it had little guns in it, the gun bays, it's all detailed. So you wouldn't expect it to need any more. Or would you? Again, somebody fell into the trap here of buying the extras. Now I have to say, if there's any extras you're ever going to buy, in fairness, and this is something I mentioned in the Mosquito video, the one thing you'll never go wrong with is these gun barrels. Now this one actually, it says Okimura, but they're actually produced for them by, I think it's Master Model in Poland. I think it is. And if you look very, very closely, you can just see how absolutely beautiful they are. They've got these machined, proper hollow barrels. You know, you can see I don't think you make it out on the video with the camera, but they are properly hollowed out, those ends of those barrels, the muzzles. So that one actually, I think people can be forgiven because they always look better than plastic, they really do. But I got suckered in again, same model, and I went and bought the wheels, the resin wheels, weight on wheels, you know, which are very nice, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with these, they're absolutely beautiful as usual. But before you know it, you know, this is a kit that was £100. Was it slightly more than that? I can't remember now. Was it 105, 110, something like that? But it's quite a lot of money. And before you know it, off we go, and we are buying more and more items. And this was, now in fairness, I would say this, that I didn't make the mistake that I did with the Ryefield Puma, in that I saw the kit before I actually decided on those, because they weren't immediately available. They were out of stock, so I had to wait. So actually I did make a conscious decision to get those as extras. But you know, it's all, again, it's what we talked about, it's adding a lot of additional cost onto things that don't always need it. And frankly, you know, the lessons haven't really necessarily been learned. Anyway, as I'm looking around beside me, I've obviously got, as you remember from the first video, that one of the big bits of advice I gave which I think is common with quite a few of us if we have a big stash of kits, is to have a list. So naturally, you know, it's 2 years on. We've got our list, and we've got 1 or 2 kits I've built. Yes, I've actually built some kits like the Sea Harrier and like the Sea Dart, Sea Wolf. I've just had to cross them off the list. And yeah, in the interim 2 years that have passed, I have acquired a lot of kits. Now, some of them are ICM kits, and as I've said before, some of those I keep. Some of them I give away for charity. Some of them I give to just friends and subscribers of the channel. So they usually find a home, and I only probably keep, I don't know, 1 in 4 if that, I suspect less. So you'd expect to see them on the list. So strange. I'm just thinking about that famous scene in the Dad's Army series where the captured German submarine captain, played by Philip Maddock, a Welshman, Nazi submarine captain, and he is a big fan of the list. You will go on the list. I'm writing it on the list. Well, obviously on the list we would have our ICM kits, but oddly I don't see any of them. So now ICM started supplying me with kits for review in June, July of last year, so it's well over 12 months. So I haven't exactly been keeping my list up to date. That's very odd. And even recently we've got ICM kits popping up all over the place. Oh dear, that's not very good, is it? I was talking about, I'm like Ron Dennis, I like things to be very professional and done in a very clinical, methodical, OCD way. Well, there's nothing. I don't think I've added to this list in 18 months. I don't think I've touched it. That's not good. So Airfix, the Buccaneer. You are not on the list either. Obviously the Matchbox ones I've had for a while, they're on the list, they're all here. Ryefield model Puma, we just talked about. You are not on the list either. The Border German 88mm Flak 36 gun. You are not on the list. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. The Ryefield, I think you can see where this is going. Ryefield model late production Tiger 1. You are not on the list. You will be going on the list. Qatari Spitfire, not on the list. Gas Patch ME163, not on the list. ICM, not on the list. These extras I mentioned, of course, these Zokimura parts. And the Zokimura FW190. You are not on the list either. So this list has become meaningless, to be honest. I haven't updated my list. Now this, you can look at this 2 ways. Is it a negative or is it a positive? Think of it like this. When my wife says to me, I saw your video and you said you got over £6,000 worth of kits, you must be absolutely bloody mad. This is completely irresponsible, blah 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 blah. I can simply say to her, but look, I've made that kit. I made the Sea Wolf and the Sea Dart. I made the Harrier, the Sea Harrier. I made that Porsche, that Le Mans Porsche as well from Fujimi. Look, and I'm crossing them off. The list is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Yes, yes it is. And then she says to me, is the Wingnut Wings Lost Ark on the list? It's not. Oh. Now let me just think about this. The Wingnut Wings Lost Ark that I purchased, which cost me £1,250. And what did I say last time? It was 6,000 quid. So that's 6,000. That's what we used to have. We've just got 1,250, and that's before we start with the rest. What about... I'm doing this quite genuinely. I can assure you this is exactly true what I'm saying. What about the Tiger 1 from Andy's Hobby Headquarters, the big 16 scale tack-on Tiger 1? It is not on the list either, and that was £150, so that's 150. Then we've got all these that I've just mentioned. We've got Qatari, that's 100. Airfix is about 80, let's say. That's 50. That's about 80. That's about 60. I mean, this is just a straw pile of them. It's about 60. I've got one there that's 35. One there that's... Oh my god, this is just the ones in front of me now. This is not. This is just a taster, seriously. So, since we had that video... Oh, I'm just trying to think the others I've got as well that I've not brought to show you. Like the... Okay, we've talked about value. Some of the ICM ones I didn't pay for, you know, that's fair enough. But even so, there's still a value there. I'm thinking about the big sky crane, the Sikorsky CH-54 Tahi. Two of those, so that's £300. This is absolutely incredible. Then what else have we got? We've got all those figures, the Tamiya figures. Armour Hurricane. I mean, this list is going on and on and on. I've got the Thunderbolt. None of these are on the list. Right, I'm not exaggerating now, and I bet a lot of you are the same as me. I bet I'm not unusual. I've got a list here, and I haven't really kept it up to date. Well, I haven't kept it up to date at all. This hasn't been touched since the end of 2022. This list, in terms of actually being updated. And I reckon I have increased my stash value, not numbers. If you believe this list I've got in front of me, it tells you there was 196 and I've made 2 of them. I'm just checking that the Porsche wasn't on the list as well. Wings. Did I get another wing at wings as well? No. So it says there's 196, I've made 2, that's 194. Which is complete rubbish. I reckon we've got something like 45 kits more than that, maybe 50 on top of what it says here. So let's just round it up, let's talk round numbers, just to keep it simple for the sake of you to appreciate what I'm babbling on about. So we've increased by about a quarter the size of the stash. I reckon there's about 250 kits now in my stash. But more importantly, the value of the stash has gone from 6,000 quid, I reckon it's gone to £9,000. That is a huge amount of money, and that is so not intentional. I never intended it to do that. Now, hopefully my wife isn't watching this video. I hope not. Sometimes she does. If she gets wind of what I'm talking about, I could be in a lot of trouble here. But you could use this, is what I was going to say, you could use this as an opportunity. The less honest amongst us could just not update the list, like I haven't done it on purpose, but mine's accidental. Honest. But you can just not update your list, and I assume you slightly. Not update your list, and then suddenly say, well darling, it's okay, you know, there's my list of all my models, you know. And she'll say, well, my wife is starting to ask questions and say, well, how come we've got the landing all chocked up with these enormous, a huge great box that says The Lost Ark on the side of it, do not open under any circumstances. And then we've got another one that's the most massive box on its own, that's the Tiger Tank, which you can't hide. And you can see it's gradually sort of taken over our landing area. I've already got one bedroom full of my stash. It's my office. It's quite a good room for it because it doesn't get a lot of variation of temperatures in there. But we have this situation where I have literally increased the value of the actual value of the stash has increased by 50% for a 25% increase in numbers of items of kits. So, that's not very good. Now, I never intended to make this video. Somebody actually said to me, one of you, and you'll know who you are, one of you said the other week, about 3 weeks ago, said, why don't you make another video about stashes? And I said, and I never thought about what I've just shown you, what I've just told you. And I said, yeah, okay, you know, we can talk about stashes again. And I thought, well, I've added a few, perhaps half a dozen or something. Well, that's not true, is it? What have I done? I haven't listened to my own advice. And this is what we all keep doing. You, he or she who is without sin, you cast the first stones. We talked about this before. How many of you have actually taken my advice and slimmed down your stash? Well, David Mummery hasn't, for one. And I'm pretty sure I can think of another. I'm not going to name everybody, Stuart. But I know that this is a common. It's like a disease amongst us. It's like a fix. You just can't get enough of it. You can't stop it. I'm actually genuinely surprised by those numbers because I didn't. Before I came on air, I promise you, I hadn't done the maths. I hadn't done any of that, and there we go. We've gone from 6,000 to 9,000 quid's worth of kits. Sounds ridiculous. I can have a car for that. I don't think one of our cars didn't cost that much, and it's a really nice car. I don't know how this has happened. Oh, wait a minute! I just spotted another one that I built. It's one less. The Edward Zero Tora. There you go. Oh, that makes it all right. Then everything's fine. It's not a problem, is it? Oh God, what are we doing? You know, the trouble is they sort of come on in increments. These things, don't they? It's like this. Here's a smallish kit. This is the gas patch, ME163B Comet, and you sort of spend, I think it's £36 on this. And you think, oh, it's only £36, it's only a small kit, you know, it's not too extreme. And it adds up. And again, with the Qatari Spitfire, I got the Brian Lane Spitfire, which I thought was very nice, actually. And with the figure, it sort of gives it something extra. So I decided to get myself a Qatari. Again, this is only in the last couple of months that I bought these. These are all recent, you know, as is the Puma. And the Tiger, late production Tiger, the Michael Wittmann one. It adds up, doesn't it? So I've just... £9,000 of the kits there, and then the fact that I could have increased by 50% the value of my stash unintentionally is a little bit worrying. Now, a small amount of that is ICM, but not. That is tiny in terms of value. It's a tiny proportion. ICM only accounts for perhaps 500 quid's worth of kits. So even if you took out the ICM that I didn't have to pay for, you're still £8,500. It's absolutely crazy. What's going on? That was never in the plan. I even said to one of my friends, I don't know if it was Stuart or David or somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I'm avoiding all this unnecessary spending. Now, this is the next subject I want to come on to, because I've talked about aftermarket, but let's talk about other unnecessary model-related spending that we're all doing. Well, I'm trying to avoid this. This is where I'm being a bit stronger. But there's so many fads and sort of new products come out, and everybody seems to get on board. You know, I think social media drives this a little bit. But it's like, and I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm not knocking or criticising the product I'm going to talk about. I'm just using it as an example of something that's come out very recently. And it was these AK colouring pens. Now, they did come out with, and there's other companies have been doing this as well, especially in the art world. But these colouring pens, and they can be quite handy for doing things like switch gear in cockpits and when you need a variety of colours, and it's fast. I think that the selling point for them, the unique selling point, is the speed at which you can actually do your models. It does speed up doing little awkward items like switches and knobs and controls in a cockpit or inside a tank or whatever. Or, you know, racing car, bits of the, you know, engine, gearbox, suspension, and highlighting bolts and screws and things like that. But they've come out, these AK pens came out, and it's like everybody seems to have got on this ridiculous bandwagon. And somebody asked me only about 2 or 3 weeks ago and said, Pete, you're going to review the AK pens? And I was like, no, before some of you say, well, he doesn't use them because he never builds anything. Just quiet. Hush your mouth. You know that's not true. Oh, those of you that follow. By the way, I must say, I got somebody criticising on one of the reviews I did a few months ago now, where I was talking about figures, and one of these guys, I could name him because I know his name, I'm not going to say it live on air, it wouldn't be fair, but, or would it? And he said, do you ever build any of these kits at all? And he made this comment on a video in which I actually showed finished models that I'd built, and they were actually figures. And I was thinking, this can only come from a person. Now, I know that other YouTubers who are in the modelling field, like me, often complain about this, and they get a little bit fed up with some of the abuse they get. I mean, this wasn't quite abuse, but it was just a stupid remark. People comment on a thumbnail. They don't watch the video, and I've had this in the last couple of weeks, and I had one person, very aggressive actually, I won't say what it was, but it would make you smile, it would. Someone who has been so aggressive and overly defensive of the product that I made some criticisms of, that you could tell that they hadn't watched the video. It was obvious they hadn't watched the video, not even 5 minutes of it. They were just seeing that it was a rant against something they didn't agree with, and they jumped in without knowing any of the circumstances, and even saying, you know, if you had skill you could do this. Well, in this particular video I demonstrated I had the skill and did do it, and it just shows the stupidity of some of the comments that people come out with. So I should just interweave this into today's theme. In future, I'm just going to make this quite clear. Anybody that comments on one of my videos, and I know straight away that you haven't watched the video, I'm not going to respond. It doesn't matter what it is. If I can tell you haven't watched the video, you'll be deleted. You're just going to get deleted. Only comment on a video, please, if you've watched it. I don't mind if you haven't watched all of it. If you watch half of it and you don't like what I say about something, and you disagree, I will entertain criticism if you disagree. That's absolutely fine. But what I won't entertain at all is people who comment on something they clearly haven't watched. And when people are saying, do you ever build any of these? And within 5 minutes I'm showing a finished item, that just shows you haven't even bothered to watch. And it amazes me, they're prepared to spend 2 or 3 minutes typing away with some abusive comment, long-winded in some cases, and yet they're not prepared to spend that same 3 minutes. They could have actually answered the question that they're asking, and they wouldn't have needed to make any comment, and would have been completely satisfied that the criticism they're about to make was not valid whatsoever. Anyway, I'm digressing. So anyway, I was talking about these AK pens. So again, I'm not knocking this product in any way, shape or form, and please don't be put off by it. It's just one example. And we've had the same things with cutters, and we've had nippers, and it can be any product that comes out, you know. And it's just the latest fad, you know. I mean, the latest fad a year ago was these the airbrushes that came out, the Fender airbrushes. And I bought one, you know. I could see they were very good value, and I bought one, only about £25 or thereabouts. But I didn't get on with it, you know. And people say, oh yeah, but you need to use it more often. Well, I have now got it because it was so cheap. It's quite handy to have it to spray things like. You can use it for me personally, because I don't really get on with it for fine work. I didn't like it. I'm used to using Awata and Estawata. Nothing comes close to that in my opinion. And it's probably one of the things that makes some of my finished models look really good. I'm not saying they all do, but it's a big factor in the good ones. Let's put it that way. The airbrush control and the finesse of it is really excellent. And I didn't feel that the Fender one was. It didn't work for me in the way I want to use it, and I like to have. It goes back to this Ron Dennis thing about being very meticulous, and I like to strip the airbrush apart. I strip it apart and clean it after every single colour. Maybe not absolutely 10 out of 10, but certainly 8 or 9 out of 10 times I'll strip it down, I'll clean it out, I'll clean the needle, everything. So I'm constantly operating that way, which is one of the reasons that some of my builds take a long time, and why I quote these numbers of hours that seem a lot to some of you perhaps. And I'm not suggesting anybody else does that, that's just my way. I like to have the confidence that I'm not going to contaminate or ruin a really nicely painted model. So that's just the way I do it. And the Fender clearly does not lend itself to being treated in that way. It doesn't want to be stripped apart. It's quite agricultural, relatively speaking. And again, I'm not knocking it. If you've never had an airbrush before, you should buy one of these, because that'll get you into airbrushing. And it does do a very competent job, especially for the money, you know. So please, I'm not knocking this product. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that relatively for me, it's not my first choice of airbrush, and it's not ever going to be, you know, the weapon in my armoury that I reach for when I'm trying to do a really excellent kit. Anyway, the fact is, it was very much a bandwagon that everybody got on, and it sort of opened my eyes in a way that I think I look at it and think, well, this is another one of those products where, yes, it's good and it's very good value, but a lot of its sales are down to, I don't offend anybody when I say this, but again, with social media, I think that modelling seems to be one of these hobbies and interests that falls under this sort of category of where people are almost behaving like sheep and copying each other, and everybody's doing the same thing, and it's like, oh, I must have that, I must buy that, I must buy that. No, you don't need them, you know. And then going back to the AK pens, the AK pens are very nice, but they're a bit limited on the colours that are in the actual set, so they're not really a replacement for paints. You know, you've got your regular, my Tamiya khaki here, XF49. You know, somebody else wrote, I was watching a review on these paints, and somebody else wrote, in fact I think it was in the live chat when they were being discussed, it may be on the Flory forum or something like that, and somebody just wrote in the live chat and said, I just don't get it, I don't see what they bring to the party, they're quite expensive relatively speaking, I can't see what they bring to the party that we didn't really have already. And I prefer just to use a brush, you know. And I think with a brush you probably have a bit more finesse and a bit more control, really. And the other element with those paint pens as well. I mean, I use the Molotov paint pens, metallic ones, very good for things like highlighting worn bolts and things like that when you're doing weathering. If you're very subtle with it, it works very well. But again, you know, all these paint pens, they do dry up before too long, and they don't have a very good shelf life, relatively speaking, compared to a sealed bottle like we've got there. So all I'm saying is, I do think that there's a tendency these days for everybody to get on the same bandwagon, and the next big thing is here, and it's like, what is it, for the money, what is it actually delivering for you, some of this stuff? So although I have sinned very, very seriously with the kits, obviously, to have gone from 6,000 quid's worth to having a stash now worth 9, it's just stupid. Forgive me, Father, I have sinned, you know. Not good. But at least I haven't sinned by... I do with things like tools and consumables. I'm very much more sceptical. And I do sit back and think, well, do I really need that? Sometimes I will buy things. So I got, example, some things that I thought are really useful that I will use, like scrapers, maybe rescribing tools, but the cheap ones. But you can get these very good scrapers. Is it Alexen? Is it Alexen, the Japanese one? Where you, for things like gun barrels on tanks, where you get seam lines, seam scrapers. Very, very good and very, very useful. Now, we all get some of these kits that have got seam lines and mole lines on them. Something like that is far better than a craft blade, simply because it's not flat. So it's a curved blade, and that means you end up with you don't end up with a flat spot down your gun barrel or whatever. So yes, sometimes some of these products are very, very useful, and the single bladed nippers like the Display, or there are several types are available, you know, God Hand and what have you, and I've got one of each of those. So yes, some of those are good as well. But I would just urge people to be a bit cautious, you know, just don't jump on the next bandwagon because everybody's talking about this new product. People are spending huge sums of money on loads of equipment that they're not going to use. So I am, as I have sinned very, very seriously and heavily with the kits recently, since the last video. But at least I haven't gone crazy with some of these consumables and equipment items, because I am not convinced. I have been modelling for a long time, many decades, and I do aircraft, I do armour, you know, we do. I've done figures, and I just never really felt the need to rush out and buy quite a lot of this equipment that it seems to keep appearing, and it's like, oh, this is, you know, and they come with a lot of fancy over-the-top packaging, some of these items as well, which really bumps the price up a lot. Not quite a lot of it's coming from China. I'm not entirely convinced about the quality of it, which is why I like the God Hand, because that's of course Japanese steel. Although you've got to be very careful with those and make sure you don't go chopping thick plastic or clear plastic that's very brittle. But yeah, it's horses for courses. Some of these products do work very, very well, and it's the same with paints. You know, is it the FMS varnish that everybody's raving about? Well, I've used it. Yes, it's a good product, but I don't see it being grossly superior to anything else. And they say, oh yeah, it self-levels, it does this and it does that. Well, I've used it in a number of different applications, and I've had mixed results. I've had some good results and some not so good. So, again, not knocking it. It's clearly a product that will work. But it's not. Everybody seems to think that the next product is the ultimate, you know. And then there's another one comes out 3 months later, and everybody just dropped that product. FMS will probably just get dropped when the next thing comes out. People are focusing on quick fixes. I think it's like, you know, unicorn products. They have got all their desire and faith going into snake oil. Basically, that's what I'm really trying to say. Something that's not really real, or not going to provide, you know, it won't make you a better modeler. It's not going to give you a perfect model of itself. Having a really good result when you're modelling comes out of many factors. It's a bit like accidents. When there's a terrible accident like a train crash or a plane crash, it's never down to just one factor. There's always multiple elements that go into creating an outcome there, and obviously a very negative one. But when we're talking about models, we're trying to get a very positive outcome. It's not just not one, you know, magic bullet is going to fix it for you, and people get very upset about this, and they, you know, they spend a lot of money and then they say it doesn't work in my airbrush, or it didn't work as I expected, and I know Phil Flory mentioned this ages ago, probably a year or two ago now, and he said in one of his shows, which I wholly agree with him, and he made a comment and said, don't think this is going to do the job for you. Only just use whatever works for you. And I think that's exactly right. This is exactly my advice to a T. Just if you've got a system of making kits and doing the finished model to a very high standard, don't be led by the nose by somebody who's just either promoting a product for their own benefit, or they're just getting on a bandwagon of thinking that this is the next big thing, you know. Be a little bit sceptical. I think that's the best advice I can give. By all means, try stuff, you know, but don't think it's going to be a magic bullet and it's going to give you perfect results just because it's the latest big thing, you know. And there's a lot of this goes on, really. And I think that people get upset by it because some people are thinking it's going to give perfect results and it doesn't, or it's going to enable them to cut corners and it doesn't. You know, you've got to still apply care and skill and time to these kits to really make the results come out the way you want. And I don't think that, you know, the next best, the next big thing, that's not going to necessarily achieve a result of itself. You need all the other elements that go into the ingredients that go into the whole package, into the recipe, as it were, to use a cooking parlance. Anyway, there we go. So anyway, back to stashes. So why don't some of you, especially the regulars who make the comments in the live chat, come on, speak up. Let's hear what you have got to say for yourselves, because I'm not the only one that's probably unintentional. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I can't believe, I'm actually quite shocked that my stash could have increased by 50% in value. That is absolute madness. And I thought it was stupid before. Now it's utterly ridiculous. So maybe I should change the title and call it How Absolutely Irresponsible Is Your Stash? Because to have a stash now at £9,000 plus, which mine clearly is, it's not good, is it? God, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, that's just ridiculous, really. Yeah, maybe I need to have a rethink. I don't know. Maybe if you make me an offer, I can't refuse. For my lost ark, I pay £1,250. You can have it for £2,000, but you can't get him anywhere else, can you? Maybe I should consider selling, though, is what I'm saying. I don't know. It's a strange thing, isn't it? You know, I was quite sincere when I made that. I know I have a lot of jokes and stuff, but I like to inject a bit of humour into my videos. But I was quite sincere when I said people are being very responsible, me included. Well, I've been my credibility just taken a right nosedive. I was talking to David the other day, David Mummery, and I was saying, you don't need this, you don't need it. Oh, don't buy that, you know, I'm not convinced by this. And then he's going to listen to this video and think, really? You've gone from 6 to 9 grand, what the hell have you been doing? He's got no room to talk. I'm not going to quote, I've got no idea what his is worth, but I do seem to have lost control a little bit. Anyway, the point I was going to make, we can spin this to a positive. This thing about my list, which is completely the list, you are going on the list. I don't think I've done a very good job with the list, have I? And it's almost made it meaningless. But at least for our wives, partners, etc., as long as they don't know that it hasn't gone on the list, you can say, well, look, like I said, look, there's 3 kits there. I've built them. My list, my stash has gone down. Of course, if they find out, if they happen to watch this video, for example, I could be in a lot of trouble. But it's a way of getting around them. It's like the old thing about make sure that when the box is delivered, the wife's not in, you know. Well, I don't know what to say, really. I feel slightly embarrassed because I thought I was going to get my high horse and say, you know, talking about the guy who bought the house for his 6,800 kits. I mean, he must be very wealthy, but he must have a slight loss of control there. I think I've got lots of control, but that's on another level. I mean, that's got to be worth, I don't know, $25,000-$30,000 at least, and the rest probably. That's crazy. Anyway, who knows? Who knows? Anyway, tell me what you think. How have you behaved yourself in the last 2 years? Let he or she who is without sin cast the first stone. What have you been doing with your stash? Have you controlled it? Have you got your addiction under control? Have you reined in these dark desires and need for the fix of the latest product? Or has it run completely out of control? Have you rushed out and bought, you know, the latest Armour Hobby Hurricane or the latest Great Wall Hobby A10? Have you bought some of the Qatari kits? Have you got one on back order? Yeah, pre-order. Why don't you just come clean and make a clean breast of it and let's hear the truth. How have you done since you watched my video talking about giving good advice? I know I didn't take it myself, but hey. But giving perfectly reasonable comment and advice. What have you done? How much have you spent in the last 2 years since that video came out? I think it's time we had a little bit of a chat about it. So this really is the sequel to my first How Stupid Is Your Stash video, which I didn't intend to ever make. It was only because somebody mentioned it a few weeks ago. I said you should do another one, you know. And I thought, oh yeah, I must get my list out and just. And then it's only today when I've been in front of the camera that I realised that half of this stuff, I mean literally more than half, I think probably 60% of what's in front of me isn't on the list. He's not on the list. You are going on the list as well, Brian Lane. Comes the day you will have to answer for this. But joking apart, you know, it's that's really. I don't know what to say now. I don't even want to make the list updated now because it's going to look horrendous. My wife's gonna kill me when she sees this, and if she sees this video, I'm done, frankly. I'm going to be sleeping in the garden in a tent, probably. So I suggest that you do not do as I say. Do not do as I do, because clearly I talk a good, you know, I talk a good sale, as they say. But I'm not very good at actually putting my money where my mouth is. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. I mean, joking apart, so, no seriousness, I can't let that get to 10 grand. That's getting stupid, isn't it? Really out of control. I don't know what to say. I really didn't realise that I'd not noted it all down. And I've just printed off, that's the latest version of it, and it's completely out of date. I mean, just the Lost Ark, say £1,250 worth of kits. And that was when I bought them, probably worth more than that now. But even at my cost, I've got something like 8.5, nearly 9,000 quid, which is ridiculous. Absolutely, completely out of control. I'm like a model junkie. So, by the way, somebody said about this chap in America, not the ultimate one that bought another house to house his kids. The first one that said I've got 1,800, and somebody said, and he did a calculation. He said you're going to need, if you do a model a week, you're going to need, even if you build one every week, you're going to need 34 years to build your stash. So this is exactly what I've got now, and I'm sure many of you are in the same boat. I was watching a video, I'm going off the subject slightly. I was watching a video a few days ago, and it was this chap in Australia, and he was talking about he hit 60 years of age. Well, I'm not that old, obviously. Not yet, anyway. But he'd hit this milestone, and he was talking about how to avoid, basically talking about planning the rest of your life and remembering you have a finite time left. Well, on a serious note, I'm not going to name names now, but I have an old school friend of mine from when I was at school in my teens, shall we say. He's died recently, and I went to his funeral. It was quite sad, and he's younger than me, in fact. So it really did make me think about these things. And so going back to the video, the chap mentioned about, you only have a finite time. Don't waste it. Don't waste it spending time with people that upset you, or doing things you don't really want to do. He said, and he was talking about, I think it was the 10 things that he doesn't do anymore to make him happier in his sort of current and future life, to maximise the quality of life. And he was sort of saying one of the things he doesn't do is he doesn't spend money on things that have got no real value and don't deliver anything. Pointless spending, I think he called it. Now there we go. And I think I watched this and I thought, went a bit red in the face, and I thought, he's talking about us, isn't he? He's talking about us. Pointless spending. Unnecessary spending on things. You buy any of these, you're going to build it. Well, okay, not God almighty, what are you thinking of? Not those. But these, these. Fair enough, you're going to buy one, build it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about stashes, a hoard that's never going to see the light of day or glue. That's bad. That's when stashes are bad, and I think you should all reflect on these words. Do you intend to build these kits? Oh, you do. Oh, you do intend to, like me. Yeah, I mean, I bought them. I thought I'm going to build that. I probably will one day, actually. How many times have you heard me saying this? How many times have you said that to yourself? But it happens, None of us... Alright, sometimes with my... They're a collection, I don't want to build them because they are finite resources. No more of them, that what's out there is out there. There's no more being made. They're long out of production. The company went bust 42 years ago, okay? So you're not going to get any more apart from those Revell, rather, they're not as good, are they? These Revell first diorama armour kits. Some of the moulds look a bit like they need a good clean up, and they're not looking great from what I've seen recently. But anyway, yes, a few of those are still being made, but most of them are not. But these that are, current kits that are recent manufacture, why are we buying them? Why are we buying them? If we're not going to build them, then what's the point, really? I think this is the question that we really have to challenge ourselves with. So many of us think, "Oh yeah, I'll build that," and sometimes you're lying to yourself, and sometimes, as with me, I mean, I'm sure I lie to myself a little bit on this subject, but with about half of them, I'm thinking, "I'll build that. I definitely will build that," and then it just gets swept. It's like it's swept away by the tidal current of the next brand new kit that comes along, and the next, and it's like watching something on the rapids going down towards the waterfall. It's never going to be seen again. You can't build them all. This is my point. You can't build every kit. It's just impossible. So maybe, you know, I mean, if the stash brings you pleasure, and I got to say mine does, it's not really a sin. But just think about, I mean, and I'm talking to myself now, think about how much money you are tying up. 9 grand, I could have another car. That's absolutely ridiculous. I could get our patio relaid with some nice new patio, or have an extension or a conservatory or something. 9 grand for models? What the hell's going on? My wife's going to go ballistic when she sees this video. Anyway, I think we've got to, maybe the way to do it, I'm thinking of one of my subscribers and friends. I won't name him this time, but this particular individual, he's quite good in one respect. He's not as guilty as most of us that are watching this video. He tends to, he does buy too many, but not out of control, and he has a quite narrow window of things he really likes, subjects he really likes. So maybe that's a learning for the rest of us. Maybe we should just try to focus, because I'll give an example. I nearly got this, the new Great Wall Hobby A10 Thunderbolt, the A10C. Very nearly got that. And I sort of, again, I held back at the end. I thought, are you going to build it? And I thought, you're not, are you? Because it's quite big, 48 scale. I thought, I don't think you'll end up building it. I think you're just buying it because you want to see it and you want to touch it. It's not the right reasons. So anyway, if any of you have got that kit, you can send it to me and I'll do a review of it. But I'm probably not going to buy it. But I think that's a little bit of there I was a bit more restrained, you know. I've been pretty good this year. I've only bought, I don't know, half a dozen actually. I bought the Brian Lane. I bought that because I'm glad I bought that. This Puma is very, very good. Bought the Tiger. Mixed feelings about the Tiger for various reasons, but obviously ICM provided those two. And I bought this. So I have bought, there's only about half the ones I bought right in front of us, but I bought half a dozen, I reckon. It's not too bad, really. But last year there was this Lost Ark thing, and there was that Tiger, although the Tiger was a gift. Oh, but I just remember the Tiger was a gift. I can wriggle out of some of the responsibility here. Suddenly I feel better about myself. My self-respect is coming back. Some of these were gifts. I cannot take... That was a gift. I cannot take responsibility for gifts. They're just a generous gift from somebody else. Suddenly I've got not as little self-control as I thought, apart from the Lost Ark, which was £1,250. A huge crate of Wing Not Wings kit. Are you going to build it? Are you, though? And I'm one of the worst, you know. I talk about all these things like the aftermarket and the paint pens and all that stuff, and the cutters and nippers, and I'm like, you do not need any of this. You don't need it. Mixed messages. I mean, having a YouTube channel, it'd be very easy for me to seriously, I see others do it, you know, to be running out and buying the latest product just to review it and create content. And I've really avoided that more this year, I think. The ICM kits coming to me does help a little bit in that respect, because I do get some content that I don't have to invest in the same way, financially anyway, although I do invest it emotionally, obviously. But I think I've improved in some respects. And obviously the Wing Not Wings thing, the Lost Ark, it's quite a good investment because they're not coming back. And even if they did come back, it would be via a Chinese manufacturer. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. We saw what happened with the Meng DR1 triplane, where the Wing Not Wings mould was used, but the instructions were utterly dire, and it was not the same product. Yeah. So that I can argue that was a good investment because it's not going to devalue. Whereas your regular kits do. You know, I mean, the Buccaneer here, what was this, £85, was it? Quite a lot of money, wasn't it? No, I'm exaggerating. £74, I think it was, £74. Well, it's now cheaper than that. You know, they're now dropping to the sort of £50 mark or below, depending on where you shop around. So you've got to bear in mind as well that some of these things, again, perhaps less so with the Qatari, that's they do keep their value because they're quite expensive kits and they're not so available. But your Revels and your Airfixers and maybe, you know, one or two of the others, maybe even the ICMs, they do drop in value over time. So when I talk about the value of these kits, that's the new value, you know. And whereas there is exceptions with the Qataris and the wings of this world, you could argue that some of these have hemorrhaged a little bit of value. Suddenly I seem to be talking my way out of this problem. If they're devaluing a little bit, then it's not quite so serious. Perhaps it's not £9,000 in my stash. Perhaps it's only 8. Anyway, there we go. Just a thought for today. I thought we'd have a revisit of the subject and try and be a little bit thought-provoking, making you think about what have you got in your stash and what on earth have you added. What is happening to your stash? Are you keeping it under control? One of the friends I mentioned, he recently had a bit of a sell-off, which was very sensible, and I need to do the same thing. Long overdue. But, you know, have you grown your stash? Is it under control? Really? Is it? Have you got a list? Is it on the list? I'm adding your name on the list if you have no control. Yeah. So, what is it? What is it that is? You know, are people getting worse? I think we're all getting worse. I think that most of us, if we're honest, and I'd be interested to read the chat at the side here when I'm live. I think that if we're really honest, a lot of us it's like an addiction, and I don't think we have listened to me. You have not listened to my advice, which was very well-intentioned, genuine, good advice. You haven't listened. I haven't listened either, clearly. So I don't know why I bother, really. I don't know why I'm bothering. You're not listening, I'm not listening. But it's quite entertaining, hopefully, anyway. Anyway, have a think about it and tell me what your thoughts are. Has your stash gone up in value? Have you got it under control? Have you sold some? Have you managed to, you know, rein it in a bit? Been a bit more sensible? Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat, and have a think about what your stash has done in the last 2 years. So there you go. Mine's gone up by 50% in value, from £6,000 to £9,000. That's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I've got no defence. It's kind of because I think it has been okay. The wing that wings thing has boosted it disproportionately, made it jump, but. It wouldn't have done such a leap. It would still be 7.5 though, wouldn't it? At least, I think. So, but these kits are not getting any cheaper, and I think that's one of the problems as well. You've got to try and get it in perspective, perhaps a little bit. You know, I mean, I haven't had a big holiday this year, so I've not had a big bill to spend, I suppose. Like some other years, I couldn't really afford to buy all these, you know, Qataris and things like that. But you've got to rein it in, people. You know, there's no point in all of us having 9,000 quid's worth of models and then we die, you know. I mentioned about my poor friend who passed away recently, which was very sad indeed, and all joking apart, really did focus the mind a little bit, and I thought, you know, there's no point in having these stash hoard that's just going to end up being sold off one day, you know. By all means, as my other friend, who seems to have his problem under control, by all means have a stash with some kits you're looking forward to building, but once you get to the point where you need, as that chap said, 34 years to build the kits you've got in your stash, and that'll be full time, no, you've not got it under control. If it takes you more than 5 years, I think, to build the kits in your stash, then you need to reduce your stash, really. But hey, if it brings you pleasure and you're a collector, different thing. Everybody's going to say, I'm a collector now, I'm a collector. Who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? I'm no better than anybody else, probably worse. Not good. Nothing to be proud of what I've said today. Those numbers don't put me in a very good light, do they? Anyway, I hope you found it interesting today. Thank you very much for joining. Hope you'll give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed the show and it did provoke some thoughts again. You know, just think next week when there's another announcement for another new kit. Do you really need it? Do you? Yeah. Are you going to build that kit? I think the problem is at the end of the day that we all like shiny new things, don't we? It's human nature. It's like the latest iPhone, you know. Nobody needs the latest iPhone. I tend to not have them that regularly. I have them about every 4 years. I want them to be a quantum jump in what the capability. But with these, obviously these are a bit more affordable items relatively, but when they add up, I mean, 9,000 quid, that's quite a few iPhones, isn't it? 9. It's all relative, isn't it? But, you know, try to just keep it under control. Try to decide whether you really need it. I am being much more selective than I used to. Certainly in the 2-year interim, actually, despite the value, and you know, sound like I contradicted myself, but despite that value jump, actually I've bought, especially in the last 12 months, I bought less kits in the last 12 months than I have for about 5 years, I think. That I've actually had to pay for, go to actually purchase. But there we go. Have a think about your situation. Share with us what your thoughts are and where you're at. Have you got it under control or have you not? Do you need help? Do you need to go to the chap that's bought the house in America and bought another house next door just to house his model collection of his stash, kit collection? Probably needs to go to the sanatorium, to be honest. No offence, but it does sound like that's a little bit out of control. What do you think? Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope you thought the show was entertaining and it's giving you some food for thought. Please tune in again in the not too distant future. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed the show. And if you do ding the notification bell, you'll get alerts for any more new vids that are coming up. Don't forget to tick the all option, not the personalised option. The personalised is not what you think it is. All is the one you must ding to get the early notifications of new videos coming up from me. In the meantime, until next time, thanks for watching and I appreciate all your time. Hope you found it enjoyable. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.